What is Nintendo thinking right now with Palworld being such a massive hit? These are the questions that everyone is asking. We have worked at Nintendo. We worked at Nintendo for, what, over 10 years?
25 years combined.
20 do the
Add 'em
math.
up.
We do know a little something about what is going on in their head when things like this happen. So we're going to tell you about that now and give you a little glimpse into what Nintendo and what the Pokemon Company might be thinking in this moment, in this very critical moment.
Palworld has taken the world, the real world, not the Palworld, by storm.
Yes.
It seemed like this weekend, every couple hours, we were getting some new update on, oh my gosh, there's this many concurrent players on Steam, or this morning they put out
some kind of record-breaking
5 million players or games sold. I think that was what they were tracking over 3 days.
Yeah.
It had a bit of a like Pokemon Go in the heyday feel to it, where it's like, how high is this going to go?
Yeah.
What is happening right now?
Just this really like wave of not just players, but also people talking about it. That is the thing that is lightning in a bottle, right? When you have these things combined where it's just dominating the entire conversation of basically all of gaming. Yeah, and a lot of people playing the game too.
So I do think that, today a lot of this happened over the weekend. So, as people are coming into that office, I do think the reaction is, I think people are shocked at this.
I think so too.
Obviously, this is not the first time people are seeing this game. It had that trailer in Summer Game Fest. It was announced before that.
And I remember we had already made comments about how similar it is to Pokemon. We were all joking around like, wow, this is Pokemon with guns. But I think at that moment, Nintendo was very like, they just brushed it off as a nothing.
Yeah, I think it would have been easy for them to say like, this is a joke.
Yeah.
People are going to see through this. People are not going to care. Or it's just going to be really bad.
It's going to be bad.
So it's not something we need to get terribly worried about. So for this to happen in the way that it did is trually surprising.
It's truly surprising.
I think a lot of us are shocked about it too. So imagine you're on the Nintendo end of this. Like, how did this happen? I can't believe this.
Right.
I do think we've seen this before as well when we worked at Nintendo of like there was a tendency to have kind of a low opinion of games made outside of Nintendo, sometimes in ways that were unfair. Like I remember, occasionally we would get reports on, what people who were going to different shows would think about the games that they saw. And a lot of times it was
very disparaging.
Very brushed off. And it's like, well, these are big games. Like, these are games that are going to be popular. And it's like, well...
Even with games like Minecraft and Fortnite,
it
was perceived as, like, lower.
Yeah, it's not that creative, or they're not doing anything new. So it's like, okay, well... So again, knowing kind of the way that Nintendo looks and thinks about games like this, they can't have seen this coming.
Right. They definitely have this sort of mindset that their games are on a different caliber, different scale. And when games like this, especially games that do overtly sort of take, some might say copy, really storied Nintendo IP, I feel like Nintendo does feel quite untouchable in these situations because not a lot of times do any of these games come close.
Right.
So when it's derivative of something that they've done so well for so many years, they're even less sort of on guard. So yeah, I think it's absolute. They're absolutely just completely shell-shocked in this moment, and probably trying to grapple with a lot of questions coming from a lot of different internal and external questions.
Right. So once the shock wears off, there are some things that need to be done. So I guarantee you that they were getting inquiries from media over the weekend of what does Nintendo think about A, the game, and B, the just groundbreaking launch that it had. This is where the fact that it launched and got this momentum over the weekend doesn't help because people are away, people are not working. That was, normally you could work on a statement, get it ready pretty quickly.
Yeah.
In this case, I don't know if they had one ready to go first thing Monday morning. It might be something where they need to push it and really get it through.
Yeah.
But and if they do ever have a statement, it's going to be something that's very
benign,
milquetoast.
Yeah.
and is not really going to address in any sort of way, and
or acknowledge.
There's also a scenario where they just don't answer at all. But I'm sure they're getting flooded with people who want to know what does Nintendo think about this? Is Nintendo going to do anything about this?
Right.
What's going to happen? People want to know. You're also going to be seeing, and this is again sort of what happens on the inside, is like the reaction from the employees who are just like,
how did this happen?
How did this happen?
Right.
What are the steps that got us to here? Because I'm sure you've had some employees who are following it closely, some employees who were not. But here we're all coming into the office on Monday, kind of shell-shocked from this big thing that happened. So it's normal to have a conversation in the hallway, or to ask your boss, or if you're in some big meeting where you have a chance to ask, hey, Doug Bowser, what do you think of this? Or what are we doing about this? Those are the questions that's on everybody's mind.
There is a very big meeting on Monday mornings at Nintendo that is a forum for these kinds of discussion. Usually it's about, Nintendo updates and updates of sales and plans and things like that. But I can see it being very much in that sort of, atmosphere where a lot of people might be grappling themselves with the how and why, and wanting to ask higher ups and the the executive team, like, what's happening and what are we doing and how should we even formulate upcoming plans because of this?
And especially the last couple of years with the Switch, Nintendo is used to being on top. They're used to winning. They are not used to basically getting punched in the mouth. To use some schoolyard parlance here. This is not a position that they're used to being in.
Right.
So again, that builds to that sense of shock. So then there's like the whole other layer to this of, at the highest levels between Nintendo and the Pokemon Company.
Right.
The conversations that are happening now. And
Nintendo's relationship with the Pokemon Company, I would say, is very different than any of their other partners. Like, they truly have just a lot of, I'm trying to find the right word where it doesn't sound bad, but they basically, realize and recognize the power of the Pokemon Company.
Yeah, there is deference to them at times.
IP, and that's a good word. Deference. They really do kind of bow down to the Pokemon Company many times. And so they're going to be trying to kind of manage that part of it as well, because the Pokemon Company is very mad right now. They're extremely pissed off.
I guarantee, yes.
Yeah. So Nintendo's going to try to manage that.
Right.
Their levels of anger, and also how they might be shaping potential plans.
Right. So when we saw this trailer at Summer Game Fest, I think we joked like, oh, they're going to get sued into oblivion.
Yeah, they're not going to see the light of day.
But that hasn't happened.
No.
And it's interesting that it hasn't happened. It didn't happen then. It hasn't happened now that the game is out. So it's good to dig into, like, what is this space that Palworld exists in where they seem to be safe
in like a gray area
from these things? So, when you look at like what they can actually do, people are saying like, well, maybe they're using AI to come up with the designs, which are very similar. In that case, like, there's no legal precedent for that at all. That's a gray area that needs to get defined. That doesn't mean that they can't pursue it, but it could slow down something they're trying. That's also a story that's only breaking over the last couple days.
Right.
It's also a case where Nintendo and Pokemon Company need to be on the same page about what they're going to do. It's not like one can act without the other being bought in on the plan. So that takes time. Maybe there's been, one side being a little not entirely bought in on taking that action. Maybe this big success pushes them over the edge. We'll have to see. The game is also on Game Pass, which means
Microsoft is involved.
Microsoft is involved. And that's not something to take lightly.
Right.
Especially since this is now a flagship game of Game Pass.
Yeah, it's not a small little developer that you could like sort of control.
Right.
You have a big platform holder, a big partner that is also
they're very invested in it now. It may be in more ways than, obviously the game is available on Steam, but it seems like Microsoft is even more invested than maybe Valve is in this case in terms of promoting it and getting it out there and making it this kind of center point of Game Pass.
Yeah. And I think there's been a lot of, articles and discussion about like what is video game plagiarism, like all of these different topics that there isn't like a true checklist for like if you check these 4 boxes then you're wrong and somebody could pursue legal action. It's very nuanced. And a lot of people are, pointing out different things that could or could not constitute as plagiarism, and it just makes it complicated because I think the legal grounds is pretty. It's not very black and white.
Right. And obviously we're not lawyers.
No.
But this is just our feeling of observing how it's been going down. And then the final factor is just now that you're past this threshold of millions of people buying it, it does get harder and harder to take this kind of hardline action.
Yeah.
Where not only are you taking action against a game, you're basically taking action against those 5 million people who are going to be very mad at Nintendo if something happens to the game they bought and are enjoying now.
Yeah, exactly. And Nintendo certainly does not want to have this like negativity around their brand, obviously, especially in this important year where they may be launching a new console. They need to have really positive sentiment from everyone. So I think taking an action that's very like hard-edged and that could cause just this wave of negativity is something that they're going to be very, very careful about. And they will care about this.
Right.
Over maybe sort of the legality of it.
Yeah.
Is that they're going to care about the public opinion.
Right. So, you often see them being very fast to take action against like some fan game or something like that. This is not that. This is a different type of project that has a lot of legitimacy to it, now has some big name partners attached to it. So it's just a very complicated thing. And again, it doesn't mean that they can't do something, but it either is going to take a lot of time for them to decide what they're going to do, or time to get all these partners on board as well.
Yeah.
So it's tricky for them.
Very tricky.
So what happens now and in the future? I feel like instead of making some sort of splashy public action or taking some sort of big legal action, they're going to work behind the scenes to see what they can do to maybe not end Palworld, but put the clamps on something like this happening in the future. That means, maybe Phil Spencer gets a sternly worded email or a phone call from somebody, or somebody higher up than Doug Bowser saying, "Look, we have Nintendo and Microsoft. We have a great partnership,
Don't
and
mess
it sure would stink if that were to end. If you keep pushing these games that are ripping off our IP, nobody'd want that to happen, huh, Phil?"
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. I think versus this. If they're going to make a big splashy scene, they're risking the thing that they're fearing the most right now, which is negativity in the public.
Right.
So they're going to be doing a lot of stuff as preventative measures for the future, and they're probably going to almost bank. And none of us knows if this is going to happen or not. They're going to bank on this being a flash in the pan.
Right.
They're going to bank on this game being just the hot thing.
Yeah. That's a common approach we see Nintendo take. Just wait it out.
Exactly.
It's not great now, but we can endure it. And
we always have another another hit as Nintendo.
Right. It'll be gone.
It'll come out and people will forget about this.
Right.
So they're going to be kind of banking on those things to have this game, sort of blow over so that they don't have to take this kind of crazy.
It will be an interesting task because we have Like a Dragon coming out, we have Tekken coming out in a matter of days.
Could it sustain?
Does this game have staying power, or is it just like the thing people are doing, waiting for these other games to come out? We'll see. We don't know.
Or could it be the next Fortnite? We don't know.
Yeah, very possible.
Nobody knows.
We also have, interestingly, I got a little twinkle in my eye when I looked at these dates.
The calendars.
Pokemon Day is coming. It's more than a month out, so it's not immediate. But this being as big as it is, and if it continues to be big, does put pressure on what they show and talk about there. And obviously, they're not going to be proactively talking about Palworld, but now people are looking at it through this lens of
comparison.
Well, now there's this other thing, and maybe I'm thinking about the thing that it's possibly ripping off differently, because this thing that's ripping it off is also doing some other interesting things.
Right.
That the original isn't.
Right. It's going to be interesting because, that might change the tone of that really big annual event that the Pokemon Company does. And it's going to be certainly a distraction for them. And also, they could have had some very impactful announcements in that event that is now a little bit overshadowed if Palworld is as big as it is and is doing these interesting things that people of this that like this genre is like, wow, I wish Pokemon would do this.
Right.
So if they have some other announcement that's maybe close to the stuff that's happening in Palworld, maybe that's going to be not as exciting.
Yeah, and they also have people who still have a bad taste in their mouth from Scarlet and Violet.
Yes.
So again, like we don't know if they're going to announce something big or if that was the plan at all, but it does feel like there's kind of pressure building. Because they always do make announcements on Pokemon Day.
Exactly.
This is something they've established for themselves. Is
Yes.
on Pokemon Day we will make some sort of announcement.
Yeah, yeah.
So that just feels like if I was working on the plans for those announcements, I would start to feel a little bit nervous.
Yeah, got to look at it through a different lens now.
Right. But the flip side of that is, as the saying goes, competition is good for everybody.
Healthy, yes.
And frankly, Pokemon has not had a lot of competition necessarily to speak of over the years. And that's not to say that there aren't RPGs. There's like Digimon is still around, obviously.
Yeah.
But something that is riffing off of the gameplay of Pokemon and pushing it in some new directions in ways that is really clicking with people. In addition to being mad, I mean, hopefully they look at this analytically and objectively and say, what are people liking about this and what can we learn from it?
Yeah, and we've been saying for a long time that we wish that the Pokemon Company would take a little break to really think about what the future of these mainline Pokemon games are like. What can we do to really like freshen up this formula? And yeah, I think that it's really hard for them to think deeply when, their old formula and the games that are following that really sort of old school Pokemon formula, it sells millions and millions of copies. It's hard to like look yourself in the mirror and say like, what can I do better when it feels like what I'm doing right now is making lots of money.
Right.
So it's good to have a bit of realization, I think, and self-reflection, and use this. Hopefully they're using this as an opportunity to like really think about, maybe there is a scenario where something could overtake me if I don't keep changing it up and keeping it creative,
Right.
So hopefully that's happening for the Pokemon franchise.
Yeah. And finally, going back to Xbox, this is a really fortuitous thing that has happened to them.
Yeah.
They have needed a momentum building moment like this for a long time. They've struggled to get momentum, and now it does feel like they have it. They just had their developer direct last week where they showed some really solid looking games.
Yeah.
Now they have a surprise hit on Game Pass and Palworld. So if I was Phil Spencer, like I would be contacting all my teams. It's like, what can we do to make this more about Game Pass and Xbox? It's felt very much like a Steam PC-led story so far. Like, how can we make that association more and more to get people on Game Pass to check out this game and stick with it over the long term? So they've got to be feeling good that, they have teams who are out there scouring what people are making.
Yeah.
And for them to say, yes, we identified this
as a hit.
We put our money down on this one and it was a hit. They've got to feel good about that.
Right.
Not everything you put on Game Pass can be something that you bought a studio for billions of dollars to get it on Game Pass.
And
you need things like this.
These are the kinds of things that you really do need to survive. It's like you need these smaller games to make an impact for you so that you can have the resources to work on those bigger, AAA titles or whatever.
Right.
So
let's not gloss over like why this game is a hit. I think it's good as part of this to just like really hone in on that. And
we have both been playing the game. We've
both been playing it. I don't think there's any one like silver bullet reason. I think it's a lot of different reasons that are clicking with different people for different reasons. So, first and foremost, like we should just come out and say, like, it is a fun game.
It is.
It is mashing up a lot of different genres in ways that are different and fun and are somehow pretty cohesive. So it does feel fresh and new and different. And there is more to it than just the shock value of like, oh, look at that. That looks like, Pokemon X.
Holding a gun.
It actually has substance. But the kind of, informal tagline of it's Pokemon but with guns is something that you really do want to see and try for yourself. It's so out there. It's like, I gotta see that.
It's absolutely a perfect like one-liner marketing thing to get you in.
Right.
But they are doing some things once you are in to keep you there.
Yeah.
Because if you just went in and you like checked it out for 10 minutes, there's a Pokemon lookalike with a gun.
Right.
And there's no other things that made it fun and made you want to stay, then this game wouldn't have 5 million people playing.
Yeah. And the thing that's kind of remarkable about it is, yes, it is Pokemon with guns, but it's also like 3 or 4 other games that are mashed into that. And it's not entirely a Pokemon ripoff. Yeah. It's also, taking inspiration from games like Minecraft and Ark, even Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
I've seen people referencing like Elden Ring. Like it's got a lot of references in it.
Yeah.
And when you mash them up,
somehow
those sorts of games don't always work. There's a lot that could fall apart here, but it's like, this is somehow clicking all together.
It's mashing together well.
So that makes for a perfect storm of word of mouth, of people just saying, hey, you really need to check this thing out.
And I would like to say that, when you first get into the game, you see no Pokemon with guns.
Right.
But you still are interested to play it.
Yeah.
Like, you have to go a couple hours before you get to that point where what you see in the trailer becomes what you're doing in the game.
Yeah.
But you are interested in some of these things that they have you do right at the beginning, like the base building, like some of the, collection stuff, like the crafting, like you do kind of get like sucked into it very quickly. So whatever game loop that they're creating for you is actually quite well done and very clever.
Yeah. So I do think there's a lot of people who maybe at one point were really into Pokemon, but sort of aged out of it. And the form that the series in now is just not something they necessarily are into, but this sort of more mature, complex gameplay take on something like that does feel like it could be really resonant for people who, maybe in the early 2000s were super into Pokemon and now have just sort of aged up. Obviously, Pokemon is something that people of all ages enjoy.
Yeah.
But, we do sometimes hear from people who are like, I wish these games kind of had a bit more to them or would evolve a little bit more. That's what this is.
Yeah, exactly. I think that, there certainly seems to be this desire for people who love this type of game genre to see, it be taken into some different directions. Like we talk about all the time how we loved Pokemon Arceus because that was a Pokemon game, but sort of did some different things. I think people have a hunger for that. They want to play a Pokemon game, but they want to see it do some different, more, out there things. And this game certainly is filling that need and that desire. So I think that's another reason why healthy competition is a good thing, because hopefully Pokemon Company sees that and maybe takes the franchise in some different directions as well.
Right. So then finally, there's of course people who are fans of Pokemon but are frustrated with the current state of the series and are using this game as their vocal platform to get out there and say, Pokemon needs to change. I love Palworld. Hopefully this gets them to come around and change their ways. This is very possibly a vocal minority situation. It's hard to know how big this group is, but they are out there and they're taking to their platform of choice and they're making it known that there's a lot to like here and a lot to enjoy and that they're a little bit disillusioned with the current state of Pokemon.
Yeah. There you have it.
There you go. A lot going on. Really an unprecedented thing happening right now.
It's so interesting to watch it unfold. But yeah, I'm super curious to see the staying power of this game. I feel bad for people that are inside Nintendo having to deal with lots of different questions and maybe grappling with some challenging stuff right now. But yeah, that's a little glimpse into what Nintendo and the Pokemon Company might be thinking and dealing with this week as they come out of this weekend of crazy, unprecedented, attention on Palworld. All right, let us know if you're playing Palworld. We are, so we're going to keep going and see how we feel about the game. But yeah, let us know in the comments if you're playing the game as well. And I'll talk to you later. Bye!